Hey guys, so I wanted to come and talk about some different type of ways that you can deal with a narcissist or deal with someone that's just mentally abusive. And I know it's easy to say that you shouldn't tolerate a narcissist, you shouldn't tolerate being mentally abused, but we all know that we're all human, we go through things, not ideal, but while you're in the midst of it, there are some tips and tricks that I think can help you navigate and get through. So the first thing I would suggest is to set boundaries. Set communication boundaries, set boundaries that everyone knows kind of like what the guideline is. So like, for example, when I talk about communication boundaries, narcissists are really big on twisting the narrative. They're good at manipulation. They know how to twist your words and kind of, make things seem as though they're not. So when you set boundaries, it's kind of like that thick line that you've established for yourself, for your mental space, to say, okay, this is how far we go and this is it. So some of the things that you can do, especially when you talk about communication, is say, these are the only things I'm willing to communicate about. So whether it's the children, whether it's the business, whether it's family, whatever that looks like for your situation, let them know that these are the only things that I'm willing to discuss or to talk about. And when they cross that line or when they cross that boundary, you have to make that choice to say in your mind, to say, to yourself, that I won't respond. I won't provide any feedback. I just won't entertain the nonsense. And once you make that crystal clear, they may not stop what they're doing. They may not stop crossing that boundary, but at least it'll give you some type of peace mentally, and you can, just can kind of continue to operate in your day-to-day without feeling so nervous and, feeling like you're going to be, on edge or whatever. Just creating that boundary and letting them know where you stand. Another thing that I also find helpful, especially again, like I said, when you're dealing with someone that's mentally abusive, one of the things that they love to do is twist the narrative. They like to say one thing and do another. They like to make you look like the bad guy. They like to play the victim. And a lot of times what you can do to combat that is I like to personally communicate via text, especially if, you're separated or divorced, or if you've recently broken up, if you're, not in the same home, or sometimes even if you are in the same home. I like for as much communication as possible to be via text. Because when you have text or emails or some type of receipt, I guess you can say, that will allow not only you and them, but others around you to see where the truth lies. And although everything probably won't be in a text message, you can have enough receipts to show and prove your side of the story. So communicate in text as much as possible. I feel like it's so much easier to kind of lose your cool and to manipulate and to kind of twist things when you're talking face to face or you're in person. So communicate via text. Another thing that you can do, or that I find helpful, is you have to kind of brace yourself. You have to kind of think ahead and realize and understand that although you're not about drama, although you're not in it for arguing or fussing or, a screaming match, that person that you're dealing with that is mentally abusive, they're going to try to push your buttons. They're going to trigger you. They're going to tap at your shoulder. They're going to do any and everything that they can do to get a reaction. So you almost have to brace yourself and expect the unexpected. You have to expect the worst case scenario. You have to understand or come to the realization that they are going to pull every trick up their sleeve. They're going to go through every tactic, everything they could possibly think of to destroy you mentally. A narcissist wants to control your mind. They want to control how you think. They want to control how you react. They want to control and manipulate you. So if you can brace yourself for that impact, and if you can assume worst case scenario, that any day, any moment, something is going to hit the fan, I feel like it better prepares you to just remain calm, not lash out, not get upset and get angry, because that's the very thing that they're looking for. They're looking for a reaction. They want to see you emotionally unstable. They want to see you spaz. They want to see you yell. They want to see you argue, scream, fuss, and fight, because they realize that if they can get you to react in that type of way, that they've done their job. And as far as being able to control your mind, control your emotions. That's all that they're about. They're all about control. So if you can kind of mentally brace yourself, emotionally brace yourself, and realize, like, watch this. You got to tell yourself, you got to say, watch this. Now they're going to do something out of the blue, and they're going to think I'm going to get upset. But I'm not going to get upset because I know that it's coming. They're going to say something off the wall that they know is going to cause me to get angry. But I'm not going to get angry because I know what they already have planned. These are the kind of things that you have to, remember and think about, and not let it stress you out. Because sometimes being anxious about something can cause you to be stressed, but more of like being prepared. Also, when you're dealing with a narcissist or someone that is mentally abusive, one of the things that I find helpful is to look at that grown person, be it your husband, your wife, your mom, your dad, your boss, whoever you're dealing with that has that mental disorder and that's trying to screw you over mentally. I look at them sometimes as like a grown child. Like I look at them as a 2 or 3-year-old toddler that's throwing a hissy fit, that's throwing a temper tantrum, that's spazzing out, all for the sake of attention. Maybe it's attention that they didn't get from their mom and dad when they were 6. Maybe it's something, that happened to them when they were 9. Maybe it's, someone who hurt them, when they were younger. Now, keep in mind that none of these things are your fault. None of these things, you didn't cause them to happen. You should not be punished for things that have happened to them when they were younger. That is something that they should have dealt with on their own. You were not responsible for the trauma of someone else, especially when you didn't cause it. Definitely when you didn't cause it. If you weren't there, if you weren't around, if you weren't born, if you weren't in that situation, if you didn't know that person, if you had no dealings with why they are feeling the way that they feel, don't feel guilty. So you have to kind of look at them as a toddler who kind of, spazzes out and, throws temper tantrums just to get their way, because that adult, that grown person is doing the same thing because they're trying to get the attention that they didn't get 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And you can't allow yourself to get so connected emotionally where you feel like you're obligated to pacify the behavior, where you feel like you're obligated to respond to the behavior, or even that you're obligated to fix the behavior. Their problem, their trauma is not your issue. It's not something that you should fix. It's not something that you should tolerate. It's not something that you should burden yourself with. So just like sometimes, especially if you have small kids, they get upset and they lash out. Sometimes you just have to let them be. Same goes for a narcissist. When you see that they're picking fights and that they're getting upset and that they're lashing out, let them be. One of my favorite quotes that I kind of tell myself, one of my mottos in life is this: you never let a crazy person make you crazy. If this person is dealing with some type of mental disorder, craziness, you don't allow them to cause a reaction out of you that will also consider you to be crazy. Don't let them drive you insane. Ignore them. Act like they don't exist. Walk away. When you see that they're trying to drive a wedge, when you see that they're trying to cause conflict, when you see that they just want to disrupt your well-being and disrupt your mental, sometimes what I do is on purpose, intentionally, I'll laugh. I'll laugh and I'll smile, and I will purposely act like you don't exist. Act as if though I don't see you. You know why? 1, it protects my mental peace. 2, it allows you to see that this whole game and this whole scheme that you've concocted in your brain that you thought was going to trigger and hurt me, it didn't work. So now you have to go back to the drawing board and think of more stuff to do and more triggers and more things that you believe are going to drive me crazy. But because I've created a system in my mind to protect my own peace, anything that you try to do, it won't work. Now, granted, we're all human. We all, we all get emotional. There's some things that might make us upset. And, you have that grace. But these are just kind of tips and things to watch out for, and just kind of things that you can do to brace yourself for the impact. It's almost like, dealing with the narcissist is kind of like you're in a hurricane and they're the eye of the storm. And you're trying to do everything you can do to duck and dodge. But then sometimes you just have to stand firm and say, I don't care what you do. I don't care how much wind you blow. I don't care how much you huff and you puff. I'm not moving. I'm not budging. You will not destroy me.